I'm going to read one of the things that a fan actually wrote in. I watched the original while in high school. It was a big reason I got into computing. I'm curious to know if the original cast and creators thought their movie would have such a huge impact. And from what I've heard, that's where we get Tron on Unix as well. So I was wondering if you could comment on that.
I thought the film would have a huge impact, but I thought it would be sooner and not so delayed. And I learned a couple things in this process. I learned that change is really generational. That if you think about it, I thought people were going to go to see Tron and they were going to come out of the movie theater and they were going to think differently about the future of technology and how humans relate to this technology. But what could they really do? There were no desktops to buy. There were no iPhones. You know, I was telling people, overthrow the mainframe IBM system and we'll liberate all the information and life will be perfect after that. It was just a big dream. And frankly, back then, people don't realize how terrified of technology people were. It was scaring people to death. But that attitude really wasn't going to cut it. And the next generation knew that. They started to grow up with the technology, and they started to realize that just being scared of it and running away from it wasn't going to work. So they made it theirs, and I think when the story of Tron started to come true for them over the years, the lore meant something, and that's been really satisfying to see that process line up.
Well, for some people, it definitely changed their lives. For me, I was 5 years old when I saw it, and I got into technology because of it. So some people actually saw the world, and imagined the world that we're actually just now entering into. What was your reaction to watching this new film with the new technology? Because I think the original Tron was created with like 2 megabytes of RAM or something like that.
Yeah, there's more in your phone than in the whole
exactly.
movie.
So what's your reaction to that now, seeing the new Tron, created with, super powerful servers?
Yeah, well, when Joe Kosinski started to direct this picture and Sean was my fellow producer, I thought, this is going to overwhelm them and, this is too much for a first-time director. And I lost a lot of sleep over that, and now I sleep like a baby thinking about that because they really made it theirs, and it's really their technology. They're totally comfortable with it, and at the same time, they did a great job integrating what was a relevant story for today using those tools. So I'm really happy to see how it all came together.
And it's one of the top reasons I got into technology.
Really?
And so I'm hoping that this film will inspire young kids to actually go further in technology. Technology's come a long ways in 28 years.
Well, but I think these two films, this certainly stands alone. You could come off the street and see this movie and have a totally enjoyable experience. I think we keep you up on the story. It's great that you know that, the mythology of this. But I think the two reflect that. Reflect how far we've come. When you see video games today, look how sophisticated this world is in this one. Seemingly the game grid has become a much more dangerous, dark, cynical place than it was when, the MCP was running over everybody.
Exactly, and one of the things that I saw in the briefing that I was handed was about the ethics of artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And I think that's touched on in this movie quite a bit.
Very much so.
And I was wondering if you could comment, either of you, on sort of how technologists who might be watching this or reading this might actually be a bit ethical about creating, because the grid is not far off.
Well, I think there's one of the themes of the movie is that the idea that we can design programs that would be better versions of ourselves without going through the hard work of being better ourselves. It's not going to work. It's always going to come to harm, and it's also ultimately it's a Frankenstein story.
Yeah,
that
very simply,
trying to conquer another universe in order to escape your own will come back to bite you in the end.
And in the end, what's more important in this story is this relationship between father and son. and then all the technology in the world, all the things that Flynn is you know.
Give it up for another day with his son.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly. So it's that human story that still, I think, is so important with this, despite all the fantastic imagination of the technology. That's what I was left with at the end, and I was very touched by it. I don't know. I personally, I am very ambivalent about all the technologies. My wife is very tech-oriented. Every new gadget that comes along, she has to have it. She masters it right away and everything. And I'm kind of a holdout dinosaur going, yeah, but is it really necessary? I'd rather walk down the street and talk to my neighbor.
You still have a pager in the movie.
Yeah, no, and I stubbornly cling on to the pager.
Yeah, you still have it.
Yes. Well, he said he'd page. It's just been 15 years I've been waiting.
And you slept with it. That's pretty
good.
good.
Right.
That's pretty nerdy.
Yeah, that's pretty nutty.
That's the
hardcore
ultimate nerd. Come on. And I'm proud of
Sleeping
it.
with your pager.
But I love playing a guy that I'm not. Because Alan is, would you call it a technologist?
He's a technologist.
Oh, he
is.
certainly is. He certainly is.
He's one of the
You know,
original
they
hackers.
actually were sort of Jobs and Bill Gates kind of were their kind of our models there in our first when we were young men. It's very much like those guys are. And but then if you notice that NCOM has become a place that it's not a very friendly place. That's another thing too. It's not the place that
It's very closed.
Very closed, but
Yeah.
very ruthless, and they've branched out into things that Flynn and Bradley would have not. Flynn certainly wouldn't have approved of, and Alan doesn't, and they just tolerate him being there because he's in name only. He's the CEO.
But it's a sexy tech world that we're in Tron Legacy. And I think that's something that my character represents. It's the sexy, sex appeal nature of this kind of.
He's trying to knock off Olivia Wilde and Garrett Hedlund as the sex object of this movie.
No brainer.
Yeah, I know.
Well, thank
It's
you
tough.
very much.